to appropriate the appearance of worth through money, prestige, high social class, degrees, professional position and knowledge, and, by pushing as many other men as possible down professionally, socially, economically, and educationally. The purpose of higher education is not to educate but to exclude as many as possible from the various professions. The male, totally physical, incapable of mental rapport, although able to understand and use knowledge and ideas, is unable to relate to them, to grasp them emotionally. He does not value knowledge and ideas for their own sake, they're just means to ends, and, consequently, feels no need for mental companions, no need to cultivate the intellectual potentialities of others. On the contrary, the male has a vested interest in ignorance. He knows that an enlightened, aware female population will mean the end of him. The healthy, conceited female wants the company of equals whom she can respect and groove on. The male and the sick, insecure, unself-confident male-female crave the company of worms. No genuine social revolution can be accomplished by the male, as the male on top wants the status quo, and all the male on the bottom wants is to be the male on top. The male rebel is a farce. This is the male society, made by him to satisfy his needs. He's never satisfied, because he's not capable of being satisfied. Ultimately, what the male rebel is rebelling against is being male. The male changes only when forced to do so by technology, when he has no choice, when society reaches the stage where he must change or die. We're at that stage now. If women don't get their asses in gear fast, we may very well all die. Prevention of conversation. Being completely self-centered and unable to relate to anything outside himself, the male's conversation, when not about himself, is an impersonal droning on, removed from anything of human value. Male intellectual conversation is a strained, compulsive attempt to impress the female. Daddy's girl, passive, adaptable, respectful of and in awe of the male, allows him to impose his hideously dull chatter on her. This is not too difficult for her, as the tension and anxiety, the lack of cool, the insecurity and self-doubt, the unsureness of her own feelings and sensations that daddy instilled in her make her perceptions superficial and render her unable to see that the male's babble is a babble, like the esthete appreciating the blob that's labeled great art. She believes she's grooving on what bores the shit out of her. Not only does she permit his babble to dominate, she adapts her own conversation accordingly. Trained from early childhood in niceness, politeness and dignity, in pandering to the male need to disguise his animalism, she obligingly reduces her conversation to small talk, a bland insipid avoidance of any topic beyond the utterly trivial or, if educated, to intellectual discussion, that is, impersonal discoursing on irrelevant abstractions, the gross national product, the common market, the influence of Rembrandt on symbolist painting. So adept is she at pandering that it eventually becomes second nature, and she continues to pander to men even when in the company of other females only. Apart from pandering, her conversation is further limited by her insecurity about expressing deviant, original opinions and the self-absorption based on insecurity, and that prevents her conversation from being charming. Niceness, politeness, dignity, insecurity and self-absorption are hardly conducive to intensity and wit, qualities a conversation must have to be worthy of the name. Such conversation is hardly rampant, as only completely self-confident, arrogant, outgoing, proud, tough-minded females are capable of intense, bitchy, witty conversation. Prevention of friendship, love. Men have contempt for themselves, for all other men, and for all women who respect and pander to them. The insecure, approval-seeking, pandering male females have contempt for themselves and for all women like them. The self-confident, swinging, thrill-seeking female females have contempt for men and for the pandering male females. In short, contempt is the order of the day. Love is not dependency or sex, but friendship, and, therefore, love can't exist between two males, between a male and a female, or between two females, one or both of whom is a mindliness, insecure, pandering male. Like conversation, love can exist only between two secure, freewheeling, independent, groovy females, since friendship is based on respect, not contempt. Even among groovy females, deep friendships seldom occur in adulthood, as almost all of them are either tied up with men in order to survive economically, or bogged down in hacking their way through the jungle and in trying to keep their heads above the amorphous mass. Love can't flourish in a society based on money and meaningless work. It requires complete economic as well as personal freedom, leisure time and the opportunity to engage in intensely absorbing, emotionally satisfying activities which, when shared with those you respect, lead to deep friendship. Our society provides practically no opportunity to engage in such activities. Having stripped the world of conversation, friendship and love, the male offers us these paltry substitutes. Great art and culture. The male artist attempts to solve his dilemma of not being able to live, of not being female, by constructing a highly artificial world in which the male is heroized, that is, displays female traits, and the female is reduced to highly limited, insipid subordinate roles, that is, to being male. The male artistic aim being, not to communicate, having nothing inside him, he has nothing to say, but to disguise his animalism, he resorts to symbolism and obscurity, deep stuff. The vast majority of people, particularly the educated ones, lacking faith in their own judgment, humble, respectful of authority, daddy knows best is translated into adult language as critic knows best, writer knows best, PhD knows best, are easily conned into believing that obscurity, evasiveness, incomprehensibility, indirectness, ambiguity and boredom are marks of depth and brilliance. Great art proves that men are superior to women, that men are women, being labeled great art, almost all of which, as the anti-feminists are fond of reminding us, was created by men. We know that great art is great because male authorities have told us so, and we can't claim otherwise, as only those with exquisite sensitivities far superior to ours can perceive and appreciate the greatness, the proof of their superior sensitivity being that they appreciate the slop that they appreciate. Appreciating is the sole diversion of the cultivated, passive and incompetent, lacking imagination and wit. They must try to make do with that, unable to create their own diversions, to create a little world of their own, to affect in the smallest way their environments. They must accept what's given, unable to create or relate, they spectate. Absorbing culture is a desperate, frantic attempt to groove in an ungroovy world, to escape the horror of a sterile, mindless existence. Culture provides a sop to the egos of the incompetent, a means of rationalizing passive spectating. They can pride themselves on their ability to appreciate the finer things, to see a jewel where there is only a third. They want to be admired for admiring. Lacking faith in their ability to change anything, resigned to the status quo, they have to see beauty in turds because, so far as they can see, turds are all they'll ever have. The veneration of art and culture besides leading many women into boring, passive activity that distracts from more important and rewarding activities, from cultivating active abilities allows the artist to be set up as one possessing superior feelings, perceptions, insights and judgments, thereby undermining the faith of insecure women in the value and validity of their own feelings, perceptions, insights and judgments. The male, having a very limited range of feelings and, consequently, very limited perceptions, insights and judgments, needs the artist to guide him, to tell him what life is all about. But the male artist, being totally sexual, unable to relate to anything beyond his own physical sensations, having nothing to express beyond the insight that for the male life is meaningless and absurd, cannot be an artist. How can he who is not capable of life tell us what life is all about? A male artist is a contradiction in terms. A degenerate can only produce degenerate art. The true artist is every self-confident, healthy female, and in a female society the only art, the only culture, will be conceited, cookie, funky females grooving on each other and on everything else in the universe. Sexuality, sex is not part of a relationship, on the contrary, it is a solitary experience, non-creative, a gross waste of time. The female can far more easily than she may think condition away her sex drive, leaving her completely cool and cerebral and free to pursue truly worthy relationships and activities, but the male, who seems to dig women sexually and who seeks constantly to arouse them, stimulates the highly sexed female to frenzies of lust, throwing her into a sex bag from which few women ever escape. The lecherous male excited the lustful female, he has to when the female transcends her body, rises above animalism, the male, whose ego consists of his cock, will disappear. Sex is the refuge of the mindless. And the more mindless the woman, the more deeply embedded in the male culture, in short, the nicer she is, the more sexual she is. The nicest women in our society are raving sex maniacs. But, being just awfully nice they don't, of course, descend to fucking that's uncouth. Rather they make love, commune by means of their bodies and establish sensual rapport. The literary ones are attuned to the throb of eros and attain a clutch upon the universe. The religious have spiritual communion with the divine sensualism, the mystics merge with the erotic principle and blend with the cosmos, and the acid heads contact their erotic cells. On the other hand, those females least embedded in the male culture, the least nice, those crass and simple souls who reduce fucking to fucking, who are too childish for the grown-up world of suburbs, mortgages, mops and baby shit, too selfish to raise kids and husbands, too uncivilized to give a shit for anyone's opinion of them, too arrogant to respect daddy, the greats or the deep wisdom of the ancients, who trust only their own animal, gutter instincts, who equate culture with chicks, whose sole diversion is prowling for emotional thrills and excitement, who are given to disgusting, nasty, upsetting scenes, hateful, violent bitches given to slamming those who unduly irritate them in the teeth, who'd sink a shiv into a man's chest or ram an ice pick up his asshole as soon as look at him, if they knew they could get away with it, in short, those who, by the standards of our culture are scum. These females are cool and relatively cerebral and skirting asexuality. Unhampered by propriety, niceness, discretion, public opinion, morals, the respect of assholes, always funky, dirty, low-down scum gets around. And around and around. They've seen the whole show, every bit of it, the fucking scene, the sucking scene, the dyke scene. They've covered the whole waterfront, been under every dock and pier, the Peter Pier, the Pussy Pier. You've got to go through a lot of sex to get to anti-sex, and scum's been through it all, and they're now ready for a new show. They want to crawl out from under the dock, move, take off, sink out. But scum doesn't yet prevail. Scum's still in the gutter of our society, which, if it's not deflected from its present course and if the bomb doesn't drop on it, will hump itself to death. Boredom, life in a society made by and for creatures who, when they are not grim and depressing are utter bores, can only be, when not grim and depressing, an utter bore. Secrecy, censorship, suppression of knowledge and ideas, and exposes every male's deep-seated, secret, most hideous fear is the fear of being discovered to be not a female, but a male, a subhuman animal. Although niceness, politeness and dignity suffice to prevent his exposure on a personal level, in order to prevent the general exposure of the male sex as a whole and to maintain his unnatural dominant position in society, the male must resort to 1. Censorship. Responding reflexively to isolated words and phrases rather than cerebrally to overall meanings, the male attempts to prevent the arousal and discovery of his animalism by censoring not only pornography, but any work containing dirty words, no matter in what context they are used. 2. Suppression of all ideas and knowledge that might expose him or threaten his dominant position in society. Much biological and psychological data is suppressed, because it is proof of the male's gross inferiority to the female. Also, the problem of mental illness will never be solved while the male maintains control, because first, men have a vested interest in it. Only females who have very few of their marbles will allow males the slightest bit of control over anything, and second, the male cannot admit to the role that fatherhood plays in causing mental illness. 3. Exposes. The male's chief delight in life insofar as the dense, grim male can never